Uh, what were some of the other challenges on shooting Sybil?
Well, one of the big challenges, of course, was dealing with the child who was abused. And we had a brilliant little girl by the name of Natasha Ryan. And since that's about 20 some years ago now, I wonder how she turned out. I don't know. I'd like to find out. In any event, she was a beautiful little girl and very sensitive and very smart. And But it was how do you tell her about a woman who ties her to the piano and then screams out and plays loud, bombastic in your ear, causing you to cry and pee your pants? It's Can you imagine talking to a child about that? And I was doing things like, some mommies are good mommies. Most mommies, almost all mommies are good mommies. But there are some mommies who are bad mommies. So forth. Talking to the child like that. On one occasion, when we did the scene of her being tied to the piano leg, and with the mother maniacally playing and screaming at the top of her lungs, I wanted to do it all in one, and to see it in wide shot, the piano, the little girl over here, and then we would go in on the mother, and then go right down to the child, and then go right down to the water just pouring out of her. So I took her aside and told her, the good mommies and all that kind of stuff. And we rehearsed it, and of course she couldn't do it. I mean, and especially do it all in one. So I said, I tell you, I've got an idea, Natasha. You sit up here on the camera, on my seat on the camera, and we'll take you for a little ride. And I say, tie me to the piano. And so the prop guys tied me to the piano, and as all this was going on, I was crying, Mama, Mama, no, Mama, no. And I started to cry, and the camera came in on me like that. And I said, see, now you do what I did. And she said, oh, walked over and got down in the place and so on. I said, roll it. And we go rolling right in, and just as we get in here, the tears start coming down the little kid's face. And I said, oh, great. Cut. And I ran in and I grabbed her and put her up like this, and I said, do you want a cookie? Because she loved cookies. And so she said, I already have one. And her mother had come up on the other side and had given her a cookie. And I said to the mother, then I turned around and I said, isn't she a wonderful actress that she was able to do that? She said, oh no, you scared her.
Really?
Terrified the kid by my big acting job.
But it worked.
But it worked. Mm.
You're good at tearing up there, by the way.
Well, that story doesn't seem to have point unless you show what you did,
Right,
Yeah.
And that certainly that movie had many accolades. I think 6 Emmy nominations.
Mm-hmm.
Won the Peabody Award, and really
Yes.
wonderful piece. I believe that you did Eleanor and Franklin prior to doing Sybil. Is that correct?
Sandwiched Eleanor and Franklin, Sybil, and then Eleanor and Franklin, the White House years.
Right. So I want to talk about the first one first of all.
Mm-hmm.
That was your first miniseries, right?
Yes. Yes.
For NBC.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about?
David Susskind.
Your friend.
Yeah, and he. I don't think I was the first choice. I think George Schaefer was the first choice, but something had happened at their negotiations, which when I was approached, they said, "Don't ask for this particular thing that George had asked for in his contract, because that's what soured the deal." And I said, "Oh, I won't ask for anything." It was such great material. That's well, Stewart and James Costigan are in the pantheon of brilliant writers.
So for someone who hasn't seen it, describe the format, or I'm sorry, describe the story.
Of Eleanor and Franklin, well, it was the whole from their births, an examination of their society, the society that they lived in was well-to-do.
Who's they?
Eleanor and Franklin. They were cousins. They were third cousins, twice removed or whatever. So they met at a fairly early age when they were teenagers, and it was always this kind of respect. Fantastic story on both sides. On his side, with his relationship with his very strong matriarch, and her story with an alcoholic father who died in a accident, a drunken driving accident, except this was a horse and carriage. And then of their eventually getting together and a romance and abiding love with a lot of kids and then polio crippling him and totally ruining his ambitions toward being a president of the United States. And his triumph with her help to get beyond that and that handicap, and to become a revered president, but one that had warts, and there were problems in the marriage, and all of this set against a background of World War, of depression, of World War, and great political strides that were taken at that time.
Who were the stars of the first one?
Jane Alexander was Eleanor, a brilliant actress, and Edward Herman was Franklin, and they were Eleanor and Franklin in both the 4-hour and the 3-hour. Makeup made the changes.
So the first one brought them all the way up to the White House, and it got him up to where he became president.
Yeah, it overlapped to some degree in that the first one brought us up to his death, but then the next one went back over a period of time and picked it up and we dramatized the 4 inaugurations. We saw almost from the same camera setup, but with a whole different clothes. Was a horse and carriage the first time, and then an old Duesenberg or whatever, and so on, going into the White House grounds. And we shot there in Washington, D.C., and were able to replicate that with 80 extras. It was tough, but it worked out great.
Did you get cooperation from the Roosevelt family?
Very much so, and in the course of the story, it is said of Eleanor that her grandmother had told her that in difficulties that one was never to cry. You must go into the bathroom and turn on the taps so people would not hear that you're crying. So this was a mantra that played in her life. And John Roosevelt came to our screening, and we had about 15, 20 people there. And afterwards, since it was long, I had to go to the John. And I went in the John, and there was John Roosevelt running the taps and crying. It was just so meaningful to him.
Wow.
So yeah, they were very cooperative, and Joseph Lash had written the book and had been a very good personal friend of Eleanor. He knew Franklin, but he was a real buddy with Eleanor, and Costigan was just the most brilliant screenplay that you could imagine.
And I'm assuming that you had to be historically accurate all the way through.
At one point, we were doing a scene where Missy LeHand, who was his secretary for many, many years, Franklin's secretary, is with a friend in the East Room, and there was a party set up and going there, and they had some dialogue coming along, and I was going to track with them through the East Room, but I had a lot of dialogue, so I had to go out into the corridor and start along, and Costigan, who was there on the set, said, oh, and I said, what? I said, well, I don't mean to butt in, but he said, it actually took place in the room. And I said, say no more. So I just started them further over here and had them stretch or speed up the dialogue so that it would be contained to the point where when she collapsed, it would be inside that room. Oh yes, everything was. One point we had chairs in Hyde Park, and we had a scene in the living room in Hyde Park, and the production designer or the set decorator had found these white chairs that were absolute replicas, practically, of the ones that were in Hyde Park. But when I got on the set, I looked at it and I saw these white chairs, and they practically blossomed. And I said, no, those chairs are terrible. He said, but they're the real thing. It's as close to the real thing. I said, I don't care, I said. And we were at the museum in Pasadena, was the setting for that. I said, they have these kind of dark red chairs there, and they're beautiful, they're gorgeous chairs. He said, yes, I know, but he said, they're not the color that was in the original place. And so I said, take those white chairs away, put the burgundy was the word I was looking for before, put those burgundy ones in there, and so on. We shot with that. Anyway, at one point during the morning, I come out of the set to go to a bathroom or somewhere, and there's that guy, he's crying. I feel so bad that the set decorator is crying because I took his chairs away. But if it is inauthentic, it's my fault. Was a different question of design being answered in a different way.
I believe the Eleanor and Franklin, the first one, was the first time you worked with Jan Scott, the art director, right?
Right.
How was it working with her?
Difficult.
Why?
Because she's difficult. She's terrific. She's a great production designer. She cares like nobody I ever met before. And that makes her a little difficult. Everybody laughs about that. We all say, oh dear, when I would drive up to the set every morning, she'd be there, the only one there, ahead of me and my entourage, right? And she's waiting. So I thought, oh, what am I going to get bawled out for today? She said, well, I saw the dailies. You missed the thing, the portico on the left-hand side or whatever it would be. Anyway, yeah, she's one of the great ones. And she has her 11 Emmys to prove it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which I think she won an Emmy for both.
Yes,
The first
she
one
won
in the
Emmys
White
for
House.
both, yeah.
And certainly when you're doing this kind of historical document, a film documenting those years and in that era, I guess you need a difficult, detailed-oriented art director.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you won an Emmy for that as well.
Yes.
Was that your first Emmy that you won?
Yes. I think it was, yeah.
Good feeling?
Oh, yes, yeah. Incredible feeling.
Are you a director who steps away from a project and is happy with the project, or you always feel that you can do it better?
Always feel you can do it better. Always say, and always in trepidation that that even though you feel you've really hit it, bang, right on, that something further along in the editing process or the score will not be quite as good as you imagined or in the right places. And that would cause, even though you're very happy now, eventually you're going to be not so happy. But that's just the human condition, I guess.
The next year, because of the overwhelming success of the first one, you did Eleanor and Franklin, the White House years.
Right.
How did you make that one different, or did you?
Oh, no. It had it had a different tone to it. We were not going so far back in the earlier years, but this was their adult lives and indeed old age and again death, but this time really done quite completely. No, it was just a continuation of the story. The hope would be that it would be seamless, that you wouldn't recognize a different palette, from the one to the other. They were alike.
Did you approach the material differently based on what you had learned from the first one, whether based on response for the Roosevelt family or from the public?
I think only in the sense that it was, such an overwhelming approval that we felt that we must be doing something right, and so we kept on that tack. All of the same ingredients were there, Costigan, and the incredible cast, led by Jane and Ed.
And again, it received, I think, 17 Emmy nominations.
Right.
Wins all across. I mean, right. Really terrific.
Yeah. Right.
Felt good?
Felt very good. Felt very good. Felt necessary.
What do you mean?
Well, I just mean that, when you feel you've really done something particularly beautiful, then you expect or want recognition for that fact, and we certainly felt that. It's a great story. That's a great love story, and the political aspects of it, the nature of our country, and of one who is regarded as one of the great presidents. to be dealing with that kind of material is rapture.
How involved are you in the casting process?
Always very involved, very involved. I feel that, you try to make a project director-proof, and that means that no matter what kind of screw-ups you are responsible for, nonetheless, if you've cast it really well, if you really worked on the script really well, then you can get away with murder, the director. But no, that
Is it an enjoyable process for you?
the casting usually very. I tell a casting agent right off the top, I say it is your job. If you keep any actor waiting more than 15 minutes, I want to be known, I want to be told that somebody is out there and they've been more than 15 minutes. At which point I will go out and say, are you comfortable? You have coffee? Do you want to come back? We're running a little late, I'm sorry. Do you want to take the script away and have a look at it and come in tomorrow? I will do all of those things because I want an actor to come in to me feeling good. I don't want to have them coming in feeling like they're crapping all over me. They're keeping me waiting out there for a half hour, and this does not feel dignified for me. So if you bring in an actor who feels he's respected and that he's going to get a really good reading, good trial, then they'll really work for you. And so the casting process is very, very important to me.
That's terrific. It seems pretty rare to me that a director would.
Oh, you hear some terrible horror stories.
Yeah. 1984, you directed a television movie called The Doll Maker.
Mm-hmm.
With talking about casting, Jane Fonda was
Yes.
starring in that. How did that come about? How was that for you?
I began to get phone calls. I get a call from Jane Alexander. She says, "What are you doing with Jane Fonda?" I said, "I'm not doing anything with her. I have no contact whatsoever." She says, "Oh, well, she called me and she was asking me about you." I get a call from Sally Field. Sally Field would say, "What are you doing with Jane Fonda?" And I said, "Nothing. I heard that there was something, but I don't know, nothing." And she said, "Well, she called me and was asking me about you." And so then I get a call from Jane Fonda. And I knew that she had been doing her homework. And and that fortunately my actresses had given me good notices. And I read the book upon which it was The Doll Maker was based, and loved it. Fantastic book. And we went through a couple of writers on it until she came upon Hume Cronin and Susan Cooper, who hit it, just hit it. And so we went into production, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Jane Fonda is, happiness is going toward a sound stage that's got Jane Fonda on it. She is so magnificent as a talent, as a manager. She's just unbelievable.
She seems to me to be an actress who, as I say, gets it, understands what's required, comes prepared. Is that true?
Oh, totally. She wouldn't she was a mountain woman, from Tennessee, and she stayed down in Tennessee for a couple of weeks with two different people, one a very common farmer type woman and one was an artist type woman, but both from the same part of the world. And so she got the best of both, the amalgam, and then working on the accent when she finally came through to what the accent was. She wouldn't go to the bathroom without the accent. Somebody came and interviewed her for some other cause entirely, and she agreed to do the interview as long as she could do it as Gert. So.
And you shot this on location in Tennessee and Chicago. Did that help?
Oh yes, yeah. It was supposed to be Detroit. They in the book they went to Detroit, but we went to Chicago because the talent pool was greater there than available in Detroit, and so. But other than that, it was just great atmosphere. We shot on the property that was an abandoned blast furnace. So it was really something.
You mentioned Hume Cronin earlier. A movie that you did a little bit later was Cocoon.
Right. Yeah.
The Return. How was it to do that, and how was it to take on a sequel that was so successful?
Not very
original
good.
being successful.
Yeah. Not very good. It's pretty hard to win in a situation like that. It's very, unfortunately, easy to lose. The first review that I got of that movie was Michael Harrington, who worked for the L.A. Times. He's in Chicago now, and it says better than the original. Well, I said, wow, holy moly. That was the only review that said that. And I agree with most of them. I don't agree with Michael. I'd like to, but it's something that has been so successful. It's not a great thing to do.
But still a wonderful cast.
But it was a wonderful cast, and I loved every moment of it. There were great people involved. Jessica Tandy and Hume were both wonderful to work with, and all of them were Don Amici, and so I'm not regretful at all that I did it, even though it didn't measure up to the first one.
Another one of your many credits that I want to talk about is a film called My Name is Bill W.
Yes.
Which was produced through the Hallmark Hall of Fame organization.
Yeah.
How is that project to deal with, and how is Hallmark to deal with?
Both were very good. It's an incredible story of the man who founded Alcoholics Anonymous with a partner. My Name is Bill W. refers to Bill Wilson, who was a stockbroker who had a terrible drinking problem and who relapsed time and time again and just couldn't get his act together, and then began a process of helping other drunks, and out of that he found his own salvation and teamed up with Dr. Bob from Akron, Ohio, who was another drunk who had, when they met each other, something coalesced, and they both pursued this method and gave it both a name and a religion, and became the 12-step program to get yourself rid of a very horrible disease.
Let me stop you right there.
Mm-hmm.